Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. Li Huowang held the pestle, using it to rhythmically pound the mortar, slowly breaking down a mud-covered green rock into powder. Despite the cave being cold and humid, the only thing covering him was an overall woven from rough fabric. Still, he did not seem to be bothered by it. He was not the only one in the cave. Around him were people roughly the same age, with their hair tied up and wearing the same apparel. The only difference between them and him was that everyone else was either visibly disabled or had some sort of medical condition, such as albinism or polio. Everyone here was different. It was as if this cave was a twisted museum displaying the various ailments that could affect a human. All of them were engaged in the same task as Li Huowang, using the mortar to pound raw ingredients into powder. Some were pounding golden rocks, while others were grinding herbs. Although it looked like everyone was diligently doing their assigned task, a few seemed less focused. Ack! Suddenly, a girl's scream was heard, causing everyone to turn toward her. In a corner of the cave, a hair-lipped young man was grinning maliciously while attempting to hug a girl with albinism. "It's okay, let me play with you for a bit. Just a little bit. Hey. Li Huowang ignored the commotion and kept his eyes closed, focused on his own task. The girl's cries grew louder and louder. The commotion started to annoy Li Huowang. He tightened his grip on the mortar. Then, a dull sound of rock hitting bone reverberated through the cave. The young man stumbled backward, startled and stunned by the impact. He immediately clutched the wounded area on his head, grimacing in pain. The girl who had escaped her predicament held down her shirt and hid behind Li Huowang. "You are so dead. Don't you know what the master is like? He'll kill you once he finds out," the young man shouted furiously, threatening Li Huowang. "And what does that master think he is? He is insignificant." Li Huowang's statement caused everyone to stop working. The entire cave fell into complete silence. No one had expected him to utter such words. Seeing everyone's stunned expressions, Li Huowang took a deep breath, trying to calm himself down. "What's happening to me? Why am I so angry with them? This isn't how I usually act. I can't let them affect my emotions. That wasn't the real me. I need to calm down." Just as Li Huowang was trying to regain his composure, a voice called out for him from the entrance. "Disciple Li, Disciple Wang, our master has summoned both of you," shouted a young man. The young man who shouted the order held a higher rank than Li Huowang, evident from the green Taoist robe he wore. The robe, though ancient and faded, was still in a better condition than what Li Huowang wore. The man brandished a horsetail whisk and observed the other disciples, his eyes filled with arrogance. Seeing the young Taoist, the man with the bleeding head laughed loudly. "You are dead. Today's the day to meet our master." Li Huowang completely ignored him and, alongside the other disciple, Disciple Wang, walked toward the entrance. Disciple Wang had a deformed mouth, skewed sideways with drool leaking from the corner of her lips. Her face was pale and she appeared quite unhealthy. Li Huowang had just taken 2 steps when someone tugged at his shirt. When he turned around, he saw it was the girl with albinism. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head, her eyes filled with fear. Li Huowang ignored her, shook her off and continued walking. The cave they were in was the preparation room. Exiting the preparation room, they entered a larger cave. This cave was riddled with entrances to other smaller caves similar to the preparation room. Based on the unevenness of the cave, it was evident that the one who made this place wasn't particularly skillful. The entire cave system was quite vast, with tunnels leading in all directions, almost like an ant colony. Above the entrances to the smaller caves, rotten wooden planks were nailed, each excellently carved with different names: the Spiritual Palace, the Judgment Hall, the Memorial Palace, and the 4 Heavenly Palace. The entire cave system was designed to resemble a proper martial dojo. As they ventured deeper into the cave, the girl beside Li Huowang took out a black item and handed it to him. "Want some candy?" she asked blankly. Li Huowang frowned. He knew that she was mentally challenged. So, despite being irritated, he took the candy and tucked it into his clothing. Seeing that Li Huowang accepted the candy, she took out another piece and put it in her own mouth, chucking and saying, "Master is great. Master gives us candy." Li Huowang remained silent as they continued walking. 15 minutes later, they arrived at their destination. A giant black furnace appeared before their eyes. Green smoke billowed from the furnace, rising toward a hole in the cave ceiling. The furnace almost resembled a small metallic hill. As they approached it, the furnace grew larger and larger until Li Huowang was engulfed in its shadow. It gave off a very oppressive feeling. But the oppressive feeling wasn't only due to the furnace, it was also because of the hunchbacked figure that stood in front of it. Wearing a blue Taoist robe, the figure had his white hair tied up and was adorned with a crown, giving him a sage-like appearance. He, too, was pounding something with a pestle, similar to what Li Huowang had been doing earlier. However, the difference was that the pestle he wielded was enormous, almost resembling a giant pillar. The pestle rose and fell, the echoing sound of rock being pounded reverberating through the chamber. "Moss. Master," the girl stammered, holding her left thumb with her right hand and covering it with her remaining fingers. She brought both her hands close to her chest and bowed, her eyes filled with respect. The sound of the pounding abruptly ceased as she spoke. Even though Li Huowang had mentally prepared himself, he couldn't help being startled when he saw the figure turn around. When viewed from the front, the Taoist presented a strikingly different impression. While his posture appeared noble and sage-like from behind, he was an ugly man. Cracked and distorted lips revealed his few remaining teeth. "You are here. Good girl. You've kept me waiting," he exclaimed, leaping into the air, his dirty robes fluttering in the wind. He then gripped her by her neck with a single hand and jumped back to the mortar. Before she could even utter a sound, he tossed her into the stone urn, seized the pestle, and slammed it down into the stone urn with a twisted expression. The girl let out a scream, which abruptly halted. Meanwhile, he kept pounding. Blood and flesh splattered across his face and body, yet he paid it no mind as he started chanting fervently. "Fire ox extends my life, fire pig shields my soul, wood rat protects my body, wood dog maintains my form, wood monkey anchors my life, wood horse protects my soul, wood dragon anchors my spirit." Once the girl had been completely ground into a paste, he held up the stone urn which weighed hundreds of kilograms, and poured its contents into the furnace. Excitement filled his eyes as he raised both hands into the air. "Start the furnace and refine the pill." Upon hearing this command, two young female assistants, their faces covered in an excessive amount of makeup, emerged from the shadows. One began fanning the flames, while the other added secondary ingredients into the furnace, various types of stone powders and wriggling life forms. A peculiar scent soon filled the air, however, it was strangely pleasant for the nose. The master closed his eyes, took a deep breath and stroked the last few strands of hair that made up his beard. A satisfied expression soon appeared on his ugly face. Finally, he slowly opened his eyes and placed his hands behind his back before turning toward Li Huowang. "So, I heard you called me insignificant? Is that true?" The atmosphere around them froze instantly. Staring at the master who wouldn't hesitate in the slightest when taking a life, Li Huowang remained motionless. He closed his eyes and focused on calming his breath. "You can't deceive me, all of this is a fabrication. It's all fake. Are you mute? Speak." The master's voice grew louder, accompanied by the sound of his approaching footsteps. As he drew nearer, the pungent stench of rotting flesh assaulted Li Huowang's nostrils. Li Huowang shuddered and clenched his teeth, summoning all his strength to open his eyes. And when he did, the dark cave around him vanished. He found himself in a brightly lit room filled with fresh air. It was a hospital ward. At that moment, Li Huowang glanced down and realized that he was tightly bound to a bed with leather belts. "Phew, I've finally returned," Li Huowang sighed in relief before calling out into the microphone installed at the headboard. A few moments passed before his attending physician came into the room, holding a white tablet. The physician was accompanied by a nurse. "How are you feeling, little Li? Are there any changes in the hallucinations?" The doctor sat on a stool and asked in a kind voice. In the hallucination, I was stuck in the same place and doing the same thing as last time. However, this time, that bald master cruelly killed a person right in front of me and attempted to use her body parts to refine a pill. Li Huowang described his hallucinations in detail. The attending physician nodded, taking notes on the tablet. Li Huowang thought about something and hesitated before asking, "Doctor, what do you mean when you say a different hallucination? How does it reflect my psychological and subconscious status? Does all of it mean something?" "No, you do not need to care about such things. It is much more important to take note of how long your hallucinations last as well as your mental stability." The doctor shook his head and avoided the question. "Since this is a hallucination, you must always remember that it is not real. You have already recovered from your psychosensory disorder, so you must not regress. Every time you enter a hallucination, you must always follow the logic of that world. With the help of our treatment, you should be able to recover soon." Li Huowang's heart pounded upon hearing this. This was the key to being discharged from the hospital, so he could not afford to be careless. Meanwhile, the doctor did not forget to cheer his patient up. "Actually, you've already recovered quite a lot. When you were admitted, you couldn't even differentiate between the real world and your hallucinations. You are on track to recovery, so keep it up. Keep fighting." While the two of them were conversing, the soft sound of footsteps echoed from the direction of the door. Both of them turned at the same time and saw a girl peeking into the room. She was wearing a black turtleneck. She looked to be 16 or 17, an age where she was like a flower ready to blossom. Her skin was white as jade, her straight black hair covering her shoulders like a dark waterfall. She looked as pretty as a flower in bloom. Both teenagers wanted to say something, but no words came out. Meanwhile, the doctor chuckled. He knew what was going on and so he just adjusted his glasses and promptly left the room. "I still have something to do, so I will leave the two of you alone. Oh right, don't forget to take your medicine on time, little Li." As soon as the doctor left, the young girl walked into the room. Both of them smiled at each other as Li Huowang felt a warm feeling in his heart. All his concerns about his illness were quickly forgotten. "Stop smiling. You look ugly when you smile like that. I brought you a little something. It's the homework assigned to us by our dear teacher." The girl smiled slyly, revealing a sling bag made from cloth behind her. Seeing this, Li Huowang's smile disappeared immediately. "Nana, we are childhood friends. Is this how you are going to repay me?" Yang Na turned around and closed the door before taking out a portable game console and waving it in front of him cheekily. "Of course there's also this. Call me Big Sister, and I will give it to you." "Big Sis. My dear sister. You are my one and only big sister." Li Huowang excitedly ran up to her and took the gaming console from her hand. He was bored out of his mind staying within this psychiatric hospital. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he might end up going crazy from boredom. "Don't play too much and make sure to do your homework." Yang Na sat beside the bed and reminded Li Huowang.
Yeah,
said Li Huowang while fully concentrating on the flashing screen. Her white, slender fingers tugged at his blue and white hospital gown as she said, "Hey, don't forget about our promise." Li Huowang momentarily paused his game and looked up at her. His face was filled with determination as he said,
"Yeah."
"We promised each other that we will enter the same university." Seeing him staring at her with such determination, Yang Na lowered her head shyly, and her voice became as soft as a mosquito as she said, "Okay. Please recover soon. I will be waiting for you." Li Huowang suddenly pulled her into his embrace. Her face was red, but she did not stop him. She just closed her eyes and whispered a pervert under her breath. Both of them did not move. They were already content even if all they got to do was just hug like this. After they had spent some time together, Yang Na had to leave. She was now in her 3rd year of high school, a very important year of her life. It was a luxury to free up half a day from her schedule. While her visits were short, Li Huowang always appreciated them. To him, she was a ray of sunlight in his miserable life. "Let me send you out." Li Huowang stood up from his bed, still in his blue and white hospital gown, and wore the white sandals that were prepared for him by the hospital. Just as he walked her to the door, he felt that something was wrong. He noticed a mortar on the table beside his bed. Li Huowang took 2 steps back in surprise. When he checked again, he saw that the mortar had transformed into his meal box. "Are you okay?" Looking at how startled he was, Yang Na started getting concerned. Seeing her worried face, Li Huowang grinned mischievously. "Fooled you. Were you scared?" Yang Na puffed out her cheeks in anger and pinched his waist. "You are already so old yet still like to act like a child. To think you would pull a childish prank like this. Wait, don't be mad. I was just trying to cheer you up." He tried to grab her hands, but she easily shook him off. After multiple attempts, he finally succeeded in grabbing her hands. When the other patients who were sunbathing in the courtyard saw both of them, they grinned. How good must it be to be young and in love. They walked quite slowly but still arrived at the entrance soon enough. Standing at the entrance, Yang Na turned and looked at him reluctantly. "I will come back again next week, so please be well." "No, you don't need to come. I know that you must be under immense stress due to all the studying you have to do right now. You only have half a day off every week. Don't waste it on me." Yang Na raised her feet and gently stepped on Li Huowang's sandals, her lashes fluttering gently as she blinked. "You dummy. Don't try to make it sound like I can't handle it. I have never dropped from the top 3 spots in our class, so I have never had any stress." Li Huowang held his chest, showing a pained expression. "Such harsh words, my lady." Yang Na chuckled and lightly punched him before leaving the hospital. She then walked toward the bus station just across the hospital. Li Huowang stood at the entrance of the hospital until she got on the bus and disappeared from his view. Slowly, the smile on his face disappeared. He was concerned about what he had just seen, and so he quickly went to the doctor's office. An hour later, Li Huowang was turning and tossing in his bed. He was concerned about his future with Yang Na. A new set of medications had been prescribed to him and was now placed on his table. The mortar that he had seen, as well as Yang Na's smile, were constantly on his mind. What if my illness worsens? What if I am not discharged before the National Higher Education Entrance Examination? Then I would not be able to enter the same university as Yang Na. Even though he was stuck within the hospital, he still knew about the rumors. In the eyes of the people outside, he was nothing but a crazy man. To think that his childhood friend, Yang Na, would confess to him a day before he was admitted to the hospital, despite knowing that something was wrong with him. Yang Na is an amazing girl, so as a man, I must not let her down. This can't be right. I've been following the doctor's orders, so why have my hallucinations been getting worse? Should I transfer to another hospital? But this is already my 3rd one. There should be nothing wrong with Dr. Li's treatment. Dad had told me that he was the best. All these thoughts continued to plague his mind before he finally gave up on thinking and sat up. He took out the textbooks and exercise books that Yang Na had delivered to him and started studying. He wanted to use complex theorems to drown out his ever-growing thoughts. Late into the night, he started completing his homework. After completing a mock exam sheet for English, he stretched his back and rubbed his temples. Yawn, what time is it? It should be pretty late. Li Huowang wore his slippers before heading to the toilet. He needed to sleep soon. Just as he walked toward the toilet while yawning and scratching his chest, his right hand felt something weird and paused. He looked down at his gown and saw something black and sticky stuck to his chest. That color looked quite familiar. Suddenly, a thought flashed across his mind. He touched the object and licked his finger. A bitter taste that was accompanied by a hint of sweetness caused his pupils to shrink in surprise. This was the piece of candy that the mentally challenged disciple had given to him. An object that should have only existed in his hallucination had appeared in reality. Once he confirmed that the piece of candy was the real deal, Li Huowang's heart started pounding. I need to tell Dr. Li. However, as soon as he was about to take his first step, he stopped himself. Soon, other thoughts flooded his mind. He knew that the piece of candy was not the only thing that he had seen within his hallucination. There were other items as well, and some of them were way more valuable. As he savored the sweetness of the candy in his mouth, he shuffled around his ward. This is a chance. Both me and Yang Na can become rich. Heck, I could even reach the peak of my life. He quickly realized the implications of all this. I mustn't tell Dr. Li. The last thing I need right now is for me to be dragged into a lab to be dissected. Plus, this is not something that would fall under his jurisdiction. But still, this is not something that I can be hasty about. I have to understand the logic behind this phenomenon. A plan started to hatch within his mind. Just as he was formulating a plan, the room around him started to distort, slowly fading away. Huowang had already grown accustomed to this phenomenon. He quickly shoved his homework and textbooks into his bag and threw it toward a corner of the room to avoid it being torn apart while he was in the hallucination. He promptly pressed the red button beside his bed, and several nurses immediately barged into the room seconds later. They restrained him on the bed. When he opened his eyes once again, he was back inside the cold and dark cave. The other malformed disciples were staring at him curiously. He sat up from the cold stone floor and once again surveyed his surroundings to gain a new understanding. Even if this was just a hallucination, everything around him felt like treasures placed within a vault. Maybe he wasn't sick. Maybe he had acquired a strange power that even the doctors did not know about. Maybe I'm not sick. Yes, that's right. I'm not sick. He had long suffered from his ailment, facing discrimination from everyone no matter where he went. It was as if ever since he was afflicted with hallucinations, he was no longer a human but a mutant. Just the mere thought of finally being free from that stigma and discrimination excited him. Li Huowang, now in quite a good mood, chuckled as he approached a bald guy near him. This is interesting. What are you guys gathering around and loitering for? Quickly go and get back to work. If the guiding drug that was requested by Master isn't ready and ruins his chance at becoming an immortal, he will skin all of you alive. A spiteful voice echoed from the entrance. Li Huowang turned toward the voice and saw that it was the same Taoist who had summoned him before, Xian Yang. He was still arrogant as ever. It was as if it was a disgrace for him to speak to all of them. Seeing Li Huowang's fearlessness, Xian Yang felt that his authority was being challenged. He shook the horsetail whisk in his hand and confronted him. Disciple Li, to think that you did not end up becoming a part of the guiding drug for Master. It's quite a shame. Meanwhile, Li Huowang couldn't even be bothered to pay attention to his words. All his attention was placed on a jade pendant attached to Xian Yang's waist. This must be an antique. If I were to get my hands on it and bring it back to the real world, it would be worth quite a lot of money, right? But how should I do it? Should I just take it and place it near my chest, just like I did with that candy? When Xian Yang saw Li Huowang remain silent, he mistook it to mean that Li Huowang was afraid of him. He scoffed and left the cave. Staring at Xian Yang's back, Li Huowang thought about his plan. He wanted to take the jade pendant and see if he could bring it back to the real world. The easiest way to do so was to steal it at night. That is a really nice jade pendant, and soon, it will be mine. At that moment, a white hand, one that was slightly reflecting the dim light within the cave, gently tugged at Li Huowang's sleeve. At the same time, a soft voice spoke to him, Disciple Li, quickly get back to work, or you won't be able to eat. Li Huowang turned and saw that it was the girl suffering from albinism that he had helped out before. He thought about something before taking out the partially melted black candy and placing it in her hand. Then, he went back to his place and picked up the pestle, continuing with his work. Currently, he couldn't afford to do something out of character, be it at the hospital or within the hallucination. He must not tell anyone about this shocking power. He planned to slowly explore the rules of this power before deciding on his next move. The mundane task of grinding up drugs finally came to an end for the day. It was soon late at night. Amidst the darkness and the sound of snoring, Li Huowang opened his eyes. Even if I am found out, I will just return to the hospital. I have a way to escape this, so there is nothing to fear. He assured himself as he walked in the cave by himself. The hallucination was something brought about by himself, so how could he be afraid of it? He was fearless even though he couldn't control the hallucination. The cave was large, but since Li Huowang had been here for quite some time, he could navigate it pretty easily. He soon arrived in Xianyang's small cave. It was simple, but the large bed that he had all for himself was enough to show how much authority he had compared to the rest of them. Li Huowang was surprised to see that Xianyang wasn't in the cave. However, his clothes were here. Li Huowang couldn't care less and immediately grabbed the jade pendant from the Taoist robe. He sneaked out of the cave and carefully examined the jade pendant under the dim light from the green stone powder. The jade pendant was surprisingly smooth and clear. Images of clouds and intricate patterns were carved onto the jade. Even an amateur could tell that this was excellent quality jade. As he carefully examined the jade pendant, Li Huowang grew happier and happier. If he could truly bring it back to the real world, both his and Yang Na's university tuition fee of 4 years could be easily paid off. Miss Yang Na, get ready to become a rich lady. Li Huowang muttered those words before placing the jade pendant within his clothing and leaving. Up until this point, everything had progressed quite smoothly. Just as he reached the entrance, he encountered a group of people going up a flight of stairs. They were almost the same age as Li Huowang, and consisted of both boys and girls. Fear covered their faces as they were illuminated by a flickering torch. Both parties were surprised and none of them made any noise for quite some time. In the end, Li Huowang was the one who broke the silence first. He raised the hand that held the green rock powder and illuminated them. Xianyang, your clothes. Were you assigned to the preparation room? It was not only Xianyang. The rest of them also had responsibilities assigned in different sectors. One of them was even the one who had fanned the furnace before. But regardless of what their usual responsibilities were, they were all wearing clothes made from coarse fabric. None of them had anything else on them except their clothes. Xianyang was not as arrogant as he was during the daytime. His expression quickly changed before he approached Li Huowang and whispered, "Let's go. We need to leave now. It's time to leave this place. I've already bribed the disciple guarding the entrance to the cave." Leave?
Ooh.
You guys are trying to. Before Li Huowang could even finish his sentence, Xianyang had already covered his mouth. As Xianyang covered Li Huowang's mouth, the others holding torches swarmed up, staring unkindly at him. Aren't you leaving? Then you'll die here today. We'll not allow you to report back to that baldy. Li Huowang was surprisingly calm in the face of his life and death predicament. Rolling his eyes, he silently cursed the sudden turn of events in his hallucination. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself back in the hospital, bound by a wide belt onto the bed. The other disciples surrounding him had vanished. "Nurse Wang, I'm awake, can you untie me?" Li Huowang called out into the microphone, calling for the nurse on the night shift. He eagerly wanted to see if that jade pendant was still in his clothes. However, there was no response even after he shouted for some time. Li Huowang knew that Nurse Wang liked to slack off, and was probably engrossed in secretly watching Mary Sue TV dramas and not paying attention. Li Huowang looked down at his chest under the blue and white hospital gown. He desperately tried to twist and turn, attempting to use the pressure to feel whether the jade pendant was still within his clothes. Unfortunately, his body was restrained quite tightly, and while he felt it sometimes, at other times, he couldn't feel it. After trying a few more times, he gave up. Li Huowang yawned. He could only lie on the bed and pray that Nurse Wang would eventually glance at the surveillance screen after she had finished her drama. It was already late at night, and even the second floor that housed the critically ill patients was very quiet. Amidst this silence, Li Huowang dozed off. When he woke up, he found himself lying on the ground inside the icy cave. He was still in the same place, but the group of people plotting their escape was nowhere to be seen. Just this group of NPCs wanted to deal with me? Li Huowang said as he pulled out the jade pendant from his pocket and gently flipped it over before putting it back. After a while, he returned to the large dormitory and laid on a pile of dry grass, waiting patiently for the arrival of dawn. He was so excited that he couldn't sleep, and so he spent his time contemplating the value of the jade pendant. Li Huowang didn't know how much time had passed, since there were no clocks around. When he saw the disciples beside him start stirring, he sat up as well. It's morning now, so Nurse Wang should have changed shifts as well. Should I go back and take a look first? Nurse AI is a lot more professional than her. Just as Li Huowang was sorting his thoughts, urgent footsteps were heard from the entrance. A Taoist disciple frantically entered. He had a topknot and was dressed in a black Taoist robe. Hurry! Master wants everyone to gather at Huiyan Palace. This sudden command perplexed everyone, but they had no reason to delay since it was Master who wanted them to be there. Soon, all the disciples had gathered in the biggest cave in Huiyan Palace. Torches illuminated the confusion on their faces. Li Huowang noticed that there were a few people missing from the group. Even besides Xianyang, some of the Baldi Master's personal disciples were nowhere to be seen. Oh, they also tried to escape with Xianyang's group? Li Huowang thought, silently watching the spectacle unfold. At that moment, an ugly person stepped out from a dark tunnel, and all the Taoist disciples besides Li Huowang instinctively lowered their heads. This was their master, Dan Yongzi. Kuh. This cough caused everyone to tense up. There was an escape attempt late last night, and 2 of my very own personal disciples were involved in it as well. I am deeply saddened. His words expressed sorrow, but the hostility on his face was palpable. Li Huowang scoffed inwardly. They were discovered just like that? Xianyang and that bunch are really lousy. There cannot be any order without rules. Mistakes must be punished. This is the ironclad rule of my Shishandonghua sect. Follow me. No one dared to make any sound as they followed Dan Yongzi. Following him, they traversed caverns large and small and crossed a turbulent underground river. Soon, they arrived at a damp classroom-sized cavern. Li Huowang saw those who had attempted to escape last night. Not a single person was missing, and they were all tied up in a corner. Initially they were dejected, but started struggling agitatedly when they saw their master. However, the pieces of cloth in their mouths prevented them from speaking. Dan Yongzi couldn't be bothered to listen to their pleas, and gestured with one hand, pointing forward with a finger. Open. A large hole suddenly opened up in the smooth floor of the cavern, and those who had tried to escape last night instantly fell inside it. This was followed with muffled shouts and hysterical cries echoing from within the hole, together with the sound of flesh being torn apart. Faced with this terrifying scene, many of the Taoist disciples trembled with fear and wished that they could look away. Move closer and observe closely. This is the fate of those who try to escape. Dan Yangzi's words caused everyone's faces to turn a few shades paler. No one dared to disobey Master's orders, and everyone came to the edge of the pit. The inside of the pit was completely dark. The pitch-black circular hole was like a whirlpool that wanted to pull everyone in. After observing carefully, Li Huowang saw a black cauldron within the hole, with twisted talismans on its rim. There seemed to be something moving within the cauldron, but Li Huowang could not make out what it was. The only thing he could distinctly take note of was a nauseating stench of blood. Whatever was inside the cauldron, it was definitely extremely dangerous. Logically, something belonging to this hallucination shouldn't be able to harm me. Nothing like that has ever happened before. He still felt anxious despite comforting himself, and prepared himself to return to the hospital at any time. Whoosh! At that moment, a wriggling shadow shot out from within the hole, swiftly coiling around a disciple beside Li Huowang and dragging him down into the hole. Everyone was frightened, swiftly retreating back to the smooth walls of the cavern. They would have long since started running if not for the fact that Dan Yongzi was watching them. The spectators were petrified with fear as they tried to make sense of what it was that they had just seen. Meanwhile, Li Huowang, as the person who stood the closest, had clearly seen what it was. It was a black mass with a fleshy texture. It had clusters of black tentacles extending from its sticky and slippery skin. Just based on that, Li Huowang was certain that the organism that Dan Yangzi was rearing here was not something that existed in the normal world. Even though Li Huowang could not guess what exactly it was, he did not want to go over for another look. Li Huowang knew that all of this was his own brain's imagination, but he had to wonder why would he dream up such a monstrosity. As he was surveying his surroundings, a sudden but terrifying thought emerged in Li Huowang's mind. What if this horrifying and mysterious world was real? Li Huowang's body started to tremble. He realized this hallucination was unlike anything he'd experienced before. He thought of those people who had just died before. If they had been real and not a hallucination, then would he also die if that thing had grabbed him? Li Huowang was starting to get overwhelmed by the suffocating fear. He forced himself to take a few deep breaths, then followed the self-soothing methods taught to him by Dr. Li. These are all hallucinations, no matter how real they may seem. Li Huowang, you definitely cannot get lost in them once again, they're all created by you, there's nothing to be afraid of. Yang Na is still waiting for me. I cannot let her down. I can beat all of this. I must. Feeling composed, Li Huowang was ready to face the hallucination once more, determined not to let it overpower him. Currently, Dan Yangzi did not know about what Li Huowang was thinking, and he wouldn't care even if he knew. He just continued to lecture his terrified disciples. Remember what you have seen today, lest any of you harbor any ill intentions. Dan Yangzi's words made everyone's hearts shiver, the fear in their eyes clear as day. With his hands behind his back, Dan Yangzi paced around in front of his disciples, his eagle-like gaze scanning their faces. Listen carefully. Assisting others in becoming an immortal is a great honor. If and when I become an immortal, I will not forget your contributions. But for anyone who tries to ruin my plans, there will be dire consequences. Humph. He suddenly stopped in front of Li Huowang, fixing his gaze on this young man whose face had a slightly different expression from the others. You are just a figment of my imagination, so why should I be afraid of you? Li Huowang thought, calmly locking eyes with his baldy master. The atmosphere in the cave became tense as Dan Yangzi raised his right hand, revealing his nails that were caked with dirt. The pitiful gazes of the other disciples locked onto their fellow disciple who had dared to provoke their master, waiting to see how he would be dealt with. Unexpectedly, Dan Yangzi's expression softened. He raised his right hand and patted Li Huowang's head, dispelling the tense atmosphere. Last night, when those traitors invited you to leave with them, why didn't you go? While this seemed to be a question directed toward Li Huowang, it was thinly veiled praise. Just as Li Huowang was about to respond, he saw Dan Yangzi raise his right hand. No need for words. Although you didn't report to me in a timely fashion, compared to those traitors, you did quite well. Dan Yangzi lowered his hand and continued, I can see that you have talent. From now on, you don't need to work in the preparation room. You will now be my official disciple. Li Huowang was taken aback, his status was suddenly being elevated? But he soon realized that with the loss of so many people in the cave, Dan Yangzi was probably short on helpers. Since you are now an official disciple and have entered the sect, you need to have a Taoist name. Humph. Your Taoist name will be Xian Yang. Li Huowang glanced at the circular hole in the corner, recalling the tragic end of the previous Xian Yang. Humph, this name is really inauspicious. Though Li Huowang couldn't care much about this sudden preferential treatment, the others from the preparation room were very envious. Becoming Dan Yangzi's official disciple meant that he wouldn't be killed. Dan Yangzi knew that he needed to offer some more rewards to keep them hooked. Xian Yang, since you have just joined our sect, I'll show you some goodwill. Upon hearing this, Li Huowang quickly walked up to Dan Yangzi, expecting to receive something. From the gourd on his waist, Dan Yangzi poured out 5 dark pills and placed them in Li Huowang's palm. Keep them well. These 5 pills are divine pills refined by me. When you eat them, not only will they increase your lifespan by 10 years, they will also temporarily grant you a huge boost in strength, allowing you to protect yourself. Li Huowang's brows creased into a frown as the pills were placed before him. Could these things possibly be made using people as well? Just as he had this thought, he noticed one of the pills roll slightly. It changed from a circular to an oval shape, almost as if something was struggling to emerge from it. However, when he focused his eyes to take a closer look, he found that the pill had not changed at all. Damn, am I going crazy? Why do I even care about the things I encounter in this hallucination? It's all fake, and I absolutely cannot get caught up in it again. Frustrated, Li Huowang slapped his own head. Meanwhile, Dan Yangzi just ignored Li Huowang's reaction and turned toward the remaining disciples. See that? Going against me means death. But you will be handsomely rewarded as long as you help me. Everyone looked alternatingly between Dan Yangzi and the pills. At this moment, all of them were lost in their own thoughts. Seeing that he had managed to achieve his objective, Dan Yangzi waved his filthy sleeves, signaling for everyone to disperse and continue with their work. Li Huowang no longer needed to go to the preparation room. His Taoist name was Xian Yang, meaning that he now owned everything that belonged to the previous Xian Yang, his status, his Taoist robe, and even the small but unique cave. However, at this moment, he couldn't care less about anything that was happening in the hallucination. He was much more concerned about his gains. Now with his hands crossed, Li Huowang looked at the two items placed on the white hospital bedsheet, the jade pendant and the pills. My gosh, I actually brought both of them out. But now, he had a dilemma. The old problem that he had been ignoring resurfaced, and now he had to confront it. If I take these pills out of there, and they actually work, does it mean that it is not a hallucination, but a real place? What is happening to me? He had faithfully followed the doctor's advice and firmly treated everything there as a hallucination. But now that these things were physically appearing before him, he felt conflicted. If all that really had been a hallucination, then how did these things become tangible? What risks do they pose to me? If that place really was another world? The horrifying imagery of the mentally challenged disciple being ground into a paste and used in the concoction of a pill, Xian Yang being swallowed by the creature inside the black cauldron, as well as many other scenes flashed through his mind, causing his breathing to become more rapid. So annoying. I don't even have anyone I can discuss this with. Feeling exasperated, Li Huowang scratched his head. After venting his emotions for a while, Li Huowang still had to come face to face with reality. After a long period of contemplation, he determined his next course of action. Whether it was real or fake, inside the hallucination, he would continue to act like usual, treating it as if it were real. If by any chance it was all real, this would ensure his safety, and if it turns out to be fake after all, then there was no harm in it of itself. For now, before he made any further plans, he would need to verify the authenticity and the value of the objects he had acquired. Having made his decision, Li Huowang took a deep breath and picked up one of the pills with his index finger and thumb. No, it's too dangerous to take this myself. His gaze then shifted to the patients enjoying the sun in the garden outside. After a brief internal struggle, he dejectedly put the pill down. They were just as unfortunate as him, so how could he possibly use them as his test subjects? He would need to get his hands on a guinea pig later. Then, Li Huowang turned his gaze toward the circular jade pendant. Compared to the pills, dealing with this item would be much easier. All right, what do you want? I went to great lengths to be able to sneak out for your sake. If it's a prank, then humph. Yang Na clenched her small and white fist, threatening Li Huowang. Yang Na, I only called you here for help as a last resort. You know that I can't get out of here, Li Huowang said while walking to the ward's door to close it. Then, he also drew the curtains. Upon seeing Li Huowang's actions, Yang Na panicked and took a step back. What are you doing? The nurse station can hear everything that we say over here. As soon as she finished speaking, laughter resounded from the speakers by the bedside. Don't worry. We can't hear anything. Little Li, keep at it. Ladies, can you please stop being so nosy? Go and focus your attention on the ICU. Li Huowang shouted toward the speakers. Then, he grabbed Yang Na's hand and led her to another corner of the room. He took out the jade pendant from his pocket and placed it in her palm, then leaned close to her ear and whispered. The more she listened, the more Yang Na's eyes widened. This can't be true. Before she could even finish her sentence, Li Huowang covered her mouth with his hand. Their gazes met, and Li Huowang looked at Yang Na with intense longing in his eyes. Help me. Everything I have told you is true. None of the people outside trust me, not even my parents, they all think I'm crazy. You're the only person I can trust in the whole wide world. I'm not insane. After a few seconds, Yang Na finally nodded while biting her lips. As she was leaving, she looked back at him through teary eyes multiple times, clearly worried about Li Huowang's mental state. Meanwhile, Li Huowang watched her departing figure with mixed emotions. While he no longer cared about what others thought of him, Yang Na was different. Nana, please trust me. Just this once. Li Huowang shuffled around nervously inside his room. The time spent waiting for something always felt the longest. During this time, he had suffered from another bout of hallucination, but Li Huowang quickly snapped out of it. While the doctor had told him that this wouldn't be ideal, he was afraid that he would end up missing Yang Na. 1, 2, then 3 days passed while Li Huowang became increasingly anxious. Little Li, your little girlfriend is here to visit you. Upon hearing the nurse's announcement, Li Huowang jumped out of the bed like a carp and rushed toward the hospital entrance. Li Huowang bumped into Yang Na in the garden located within the hospital, and they embraced each other with excitement. She suppressed her voice and whispered in his ear, Huowang, it's real, the jade pendant is real. I'm not sick. I'm not sick. Li Huowang exclaimed, tightly hugging the girl and twirling her in the air. The two basked in their excitement for quite a while before finally calming down. Did me asking for your help affect your life and studies? Li Huowang asked Yang Na in a voice filled with concern, as they sat beside a flower bed in the garden. However, Yang Na decided to dodge the question by changing the topic. She extended 4 slender fingers toward Li Huowang. Do you know how much this jade pendant is worth? This much. 40,000? 400,000. And I am sure that he undervalued it. We'll definitely get a better offer if we ask around. 400,000. Damn, 400,000. Li Huowang chuckled. Such a sum could cover his medical expenses for these few years, and there would even be some left over. Even more importantly, this was just the beginning. Miss Yang Na, are you ready to become a wealthy wife? Li Huowang's teasing made Yang Na blush slightly. Stop joking. All of this is so strange. Are you sure that it won't harm your body? It's fine. I'm perfectly okay. What could possibly happen to me? Heck, with the current situation, I might have to lengthen the duration of my treatment. After all, this is precious. I can't be cured too quickly. Hearing this, Yang Na's expression tensed up. She worriedly replied, Huowang, these are 2 separate matters. I don't want money. You must not stop your treatment or your medications. Promise me, or I won't help you anymore. Li Huowang had thought of many reasons to refute her, but a warm feeling arose in his heart as he looked at her concerned eyes. Okay, I promise you. Yang Na smiled, and gently patted his head. That's more like it, you stinky head. Just as the two were discussing how to sell this jade pendant, a few burly middle-aged men bustled past with riot forks. Confused, Li Huowang asked one of the familiar faces, what happened to Master Zhao? Did something happen? Don't ask what you shouldn't, little Li, get back to your ward quickly. Also, if you happen to meet old Lu, remember to report it immediately. That guy must have secretly spit out his medications again. That person hurriedly said, then turned back and rushed toward the stairs. Aren't there 2 layers of iron barricades surrounding the critically ill zone? How did old Lu manage to escape with his small physique? Li Huowang thought as he looked toward the critically ill zone with eyes full of doubt. Back when he could not differentiate between hallucination and reality, he was kept there for a period of time. Those memories were not very pleasant. Li Huowang saw that the other patients were being escorted back to their wards by their respective nurses. Seeing this, he turned to Yang Na and said, it's a little chaotic here, so you should go back first. Call the hospital tonight and we'll talk over the phone. Okay. Take care of yourself. Also, remember what you just promised me. Yang Na said before turning around to walk toward the distant hospital entrance. 400,000. Li Huowang sighed as he walked toward his ward. Quite a few new ideas and questions started popping up in his mind after confirming that the jade pendant was worth so much. Was it a hallucination or a reality? Then again, if something from there was so valuable, then it didn't matter whether it was a hallucination or reality. He hadn't even taken a few steps before a familiar cry resounded behind him. Li Huowang turned back, only to see a bald and skinny old man knocking Yang Na to the ground. Li Huowang's blood instantly boiled over as he witnessed such a scene unfold. He gritted his teeth and dashed up fiercely, "Old Lu. That's my girlfriend, let go of her." Hoo hoo hoo, a whistling sound filled the air as a hexagonal brick flipped and flew toward Li Huowang, directly smashing into his head. Li Huowang felt the world spinning around him, and then he fell heavily onto the ground. His vision gradually turned red due to the wound that had opened up on his head. A pair of bloated feet covered with the hospital gown walked across Li Huowang's reddened vision, toward the screaming and struggling Yang Na. The heavy footsteps gradually approached Yang Na. There was only one thought running through Li Huowang's mind. I must not let Yang Na be harmed. Trembling, he fished out one of the pills given to him by the master and stuffed it into his mouth. It mixed along with his own blood that was flowing out of the wound on his head. In an instant, an extremely hot stream of energy surged out from his abdomen into his four limbs, filling him with strength. At the same time, his fuzzy mind instantly turned incomparably clear. Bang! He delivered a firm punch onto the fatty's chin. The impact caused some of the fatty's yellowed teeth to fly out, barely leaving him with any teeth. Drenched in blood, Li Huowang paid no attention to the fatty who had now fallen onto the ground. Instead, he took large strides toward old Lu, and stomped on his skinny chest. Crack crack. The sound of bones breaking resounded over and over. At the same time, old Lu was spitting out blood, his bones breaking into pieces like noodles. Meanwhile, Yang Na was sobbing on the ground, clutching her tattered sweater. Seeing this, Li Huowang clenched his teeth, causing his gums to bleed as well. His bloodshot eyes stared unwaveringly at the two people on the ground. He stomped on the concrete floor with one foot, and then leapt toward them like a cheetah. Huowang. Stop. What are you doing? Li Huowang lay on the bed, wearing the hospital's specialized straitjacket. He looked up at the intravenous drip above him, seemingly waiting for something. Then, the ward door squeaked open, and in came a voice, "Hey, little Li, weren't you recovering well before? What happened so suddenly?" Li Huowang's attending physician walked in, looking at him with a disappointed expression. Upon hearing this, Li Huowang, whose head was wrapped in bandages, anxiously explained his case. "Doctor, they were the ones who attacked Yang Na first. I was forced to fight back to protect her." The doctor adjusted his glasses with his finger and said, "You call that fighting back? That's more like killing. Lu Jianya is still admitted to the ICU. Your kick nearly killed him. You have spent quite some time here and know how the others are. Did you really not consider Master Lu's condition before you took action? I had assumed you to be a sensible kid." When Li Huowang thought of the frightened Yang Na, he continued to remain indignant. So what if he has a mental illness? Does that give him a free pass to do whatever the heck he wants? If I had to choose between Yang Na being harmed or being sent to prison, I would pick the latter in a heartbeat. Hearing Li Huowang's retort, the attending physician was at a loss for words. Finally, he just sighed and shook his head. Forget it, the hospital director has called the families of both parties. You don't need to worry about these matters anymore. Upon hearing that, Li Huowang turned away and curled toward the other side of the bed where no one was facing him, contemplating whether the jade pendant worth 400,000 would be enough for compensation. However, he wasn't all that worried. Now that he knew that those pills were indeed effective, Li Huowang suddenly felt that he had many new choices in his life. Feeling that his young patient's spirits were low, the doctor tried to console him. "Little Li, don't worry, you won't be sent to jail. The hospital can issue a certificate for you. Focus on recuperating properly, and we'll handle the other matters. Li Huowang sensed the concern in his tone and replied, "Thank you, doctor. There's no need to thank me, after all, I'm still your attending physician. And I have to care more for you as well since you're so young." Li Huowang felt his hand pat his own shoulder. "But little Li, tell me the truth. How did you manage to injure them to that extent? That's not something the average person can achieve. Were you in a normal state, or were you going through a stressed hallucination?" Li Huowang's heart skipped a beat, his attention focusing on his shirt pocket. "That was me. I specialize in psychology and have some expertise in this area. Think well before you answer me again, and don't try to hide your illness. I especially hate it when my patients try to deceive me." Though the doctor's tone was friendly, Li Huowang could sense the heavy atmosphere in the room. What should I do? I can't let him know about the existence of those pills. Just as Li Huowang was anxiously trying to find a way to avoid the question, his surroundings started to fade, and the doctor's voice started growing hazy. Just a few seconds later, he found that he had once again slipped into the hallucination and that he was lying on the stone bed inside Xianyang's solitary cave. He sat up and supported his head, surveyed the simple furnishings around him, and smiled. No matter what happens, this is also a way out. He did not plan to return so quickly this time around. In case the doctor was the one waiting for him. He stepped out of his room and saw some of his fellow disciples entering and leaving the cave's passageways. His mind started to plan his next moves. Since those pills were effective, he knew that he could not be as careless in the future. He had to manage his standing in this place properly and maximize the benefits he could reap from there. Fortunately, his status was elevated from a mere guiding drug ingredient working away in the preparation room to one of Baldi's official disciples. This allowed him to have much more freedom of movement. When he saw a bearded man who was also wearing a set of Taoist robes walk by him, Li Huowang's eyes gleamed, and he immediately chased after him, shouting, "Senior, senior." The bearded Taoist turned to find that it was Li Huowang who was calling out to him. He replied indifferently, "Junior Xianyang, what's the matter?" Li Huowang imitated the tone they spoke in. "Junior just became master's disciple and would like to receive senior's guidance. What should I be doing next? Forgive me for being blunt, but even though you were personally accepted by master, your seniority is the lowest. For now, you can only run errands within Zephyr Temple. Only the inner circle disciples have the privilege of learning the cultivation of immortality from the master, and you aren't qualified enough yet. For now, follow me and wait outside the pill room." Cultivation of immortality? Li Huowang mumbled to himself. He had never heard of any immortal using humans to refine pills to achieve immortality. Can master really become an immortal? The bearded Taoist had a look of self-satisfaction as he said, "Of course. Master even has supernatural powers. You just need to serve him well." From talking to this senior called Xian, Li Huowang also got a clearer idea of the hierarchy within this cavernous Taoist temple. There were 5 official disciples, 1 personal disciple, and only 1 temple master, which was Dan Yangzi himself. Aside from these people, the rest were just auxiliary staff members, such as the cooks, the guiding drug ingredients working in the preparation room, or the young assistants tasked with doing miscellaneous work. In total, there were around 180 people. This was the first time that Li Huowang got a comprehensive understanding of this Taoist academy. They didn't have a lot of people, especially after the last batch of disciples died. While they were conversing, the pill furnace appeared before Li Huowang again, and along with it came a sense of suppression. White smoke faintly wafted out from within, as though it was being used to refine something. This time, accompanying Dan Yangzi was his inner circle disciple as well, who had a gloomy expression. After waiting for a while with Xian, Li Huowang was assigned his task. It was the same task as the previous Xianyang, to retrieve ingredients and keep a proper inventory of the preparation room. Li Huowang arrived at the preparation room, which was covered in white dust. On the way, he stole glances at the waists of others he saw, hoping to find another jade pendant. Unfortunately, he was disappointed. When Li Huowang returned to the furnace room, he saw the large and oppressive pill furnace slowly opening. At the same time, Dan Youngzi flicked his sleeves, causing several dark blue pills to be arranged neatly into rows in front of him and then be poured into the khaki gourd hanging on his waist. As he watched this, Li Huowang burned with envy. These should be the supernatural powers that Xianyin had told him about. He wondered if he could learn them somehow. If I could bring this ability back to reality, then focusing purely on money would be quite short-sighted. Li Huowang bent down to place the ingredients in his hand, ready to observe and listen. Currently, he did not understand much, so it was better to just watch and absorb as much as he could. Xian Yang. Another task? So soon. Am I really just an errand boy now? I can't keep running around like this. I've got to think of a way to convince Baldi to pass his supernatural powers on to me. In response to his name being called out, Li Huowang clasped his hands together and bowed toward Dan Youngzi. Master, what are your orders? Go to the preparation room and bring the guiding drug ingredient called by Ling Miao. Li Huowang's heart skipped a beat. His right hand reached into his sleeve and touched the golden anklet that had a red thread tied around it. Bai Lingmiao seemed to be the name of that young girl suffering from albinism. Eh? Upon seeing his new disciple not reacting, Dan Youngzi turned to look at him. Li Huowang clenched his teeth. He had just told them that he would protect them, but now he had to send her to her death immediately after. It was honestly rather indefensible. Didn't you hear what I said? Sensing that Dan Youngzi's tone was becoming antagonistic, Li Huowang sighed helplessly before closing his eyes. When he reopened them, he was once again returned to the pristine hospital ward, bound to the bed. What should I do? If it had been before, then he would have just followed the orders without any hesitation. But the problem was that there was a very real possibility of that world being real. If he really brought her to Baldi, it would likely result in her death. This fact weighed heavily on his conscience. After the nurses released him, Li Huowang bit his nails and paced back and forth in his room. What should I do? What should I do? Before he could come up with any ideas, the door was pushed open, and his attending physician walked in. He smiled bitterly. He was trapped on both sides, and now he had nowhere else to run. The doctor pointed at him with a frustrated look on his face and said, "Hey, we'll talk one-on-one after the visitors leave." Visitors? Before Li Huowang could respond, he saw his weary-looking mother enter the room with a bag of fruits. I heard that you got into a fight at the hospital. How's your head? Why are you wrapped in bandages like that? Does it hurt? She rushed over and examined him anxiously. Mom, it doesn't hurt. I'm fine, really. It's them who caused trouble. Li Huowang immediately reassured her. After he spent some time consoling her, at least Li Huowang ensured that his mom wouldn't shed tears. Faced with his next of kin, even his troubles at the other end had to take a step back. Li Huowang selectively reported some positive news. Mom, don't worry, I'm fine. My illness is much better now, and I've also been keeping up with my studies. I'll be able to take the entrance exam once I'm discharged. Stop hiding things from me. The doctor has told me everything. Go on, tell me what exactly happened that day. Who started the fight? Li Huowang used the calmest tone he could muster to explain to his mother, but that did not seem to appease his mother's anger by much. That's perfectly justified, so what compensation are we talking about? They are the ones who were in the wrong. Even if they have some mental illness, it's the hospital's responsibility to take care of them. Our family has never bullied others, but we don't let others bully us either. If they want to file a lawsuit, then the truth will still be on our side in the court. Sun Shaoqin said as she slammed the table in agitation. Li Huowang continued to soothe her while glancing at the doctor who was awkwardly touching his nose beside them. Mom, don't get so worked up. You came all the way here to visit me, so let's enjoy our time together. Sun Shaoqin suppressed the rage in her heart and bent down to take out the fruits from her bag. Don't bother yourself with this matter. Mom will settle it. Come, these are your favorite grapes. Eat more, you have become so skinny now. The hospital food isn't that good, right? No, the hospital food is not bad. Li Huowang sat beside her and began to eat. Li Huowang felt at ease as he listened to his mother's complaints while eating the sweet grapes. He liked this sort of feeling. He had not experienced familial warmth for a long time, ever since he had entered the hospital. As he looked at his mother, Li Huowang almost wanted to spill out everything that had happened to him. But just as the words reached the tip of his tongue, he swallowed them back. No, she's different from Yang Na. If I speak of it, she'll only think that my illness has become even worse. I cannot let her worry anymore. I'll only tell her once everything has stabilized. Just as the mother and son were happily chatting, the attending physician's phone rang. After listening for a bit, he said, "Madam Sun, Mr. Lu's family has also arrived. Let's go have a look. Son, stay here and rest. Also, eat more. I'll get some more for you once you're done," Sun Shaoqin cheerfully said to Li Huowang, then puffed her chest and turned toward the door. She seemed like a rooster about to enter a confrontation. Without even knowing why, Li Huowang felt an immense sense of peace as he watched her departing figure. Due to his mother being so strong-willed, Li Huowang felt very secure as long as he was by her side. She was just like a large umbrella above his head, one that protected him from the turbulent wind and rain. All his worries from before seemed to vanish in an instant. "Kiki, the lobby will definitely be bustling later on." Li Huowang took another yellow-green grape and bit down on it, causing the fresh juices to burst forth in his mouth. At that moment, Li Huowang's body shook violently for a while, and his surroundings started changing once again.
Oh no.
Mom's visit almost made me forget about how to trick that baldy. What should I do now? When his surroundings stabilized, Li Huowang found that he was already standing in the preparation room. Dan Yangzi was also standing nearby, looking quite displeased. Meanwhile, the other attendants were huddled in a circle with their heads drooping. Dan Yangzi flipped his filthy hand to reveal a black, viscous object wriggling within the palm of his hand. Each movement was accompanied by a sound as though it was a toad trying to lick its eyeballs. Wasn't it supposed to be that he would be using Bilingmiao to refine pills? Did the script change? Li Huowang hesitated for a second, then asked, "Master, what is that?" It's good stuff. Taisui, black Taisui. It's good stuff. Taisui, black Taisui. Dan Yangzi's icy-cold voice reverberated in the small preparation room. Li Huowang tilted his head slightly before once again glancing at the disgusting object placed in Dan Yangzi's hand. Upon closer inspection, he realized that it was quite similar to the thing inside the black cauldron. No, the thing in Dan Yangzi's hand was definitely the same man-eating creature. This thing is a black Taisui? Is he planning to use this thing to refine these pills? Such a strange taste. With a flick of Dan Yangzi's wrist, the squirming black Taisui flew through the air in an arc before landing directly on Li Huowang's foot. The sticky and soft texture sent shivers down Li Huowang's spine, and his legs involuntarily trembled as he backed away. Li Huowang stared at the dust-covered black Taisui that sat on the floor before looking toward Dan Yangzi in confusion. He could not understand what all this was supposed to mean. "It's a reward for you. Pick it up and swallow it."